Hello there, listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Open Book, Open Mind. I'm your host, Edgar Chaput. Open Book, Open Mind is the podcast where we discuss books. They could be novels, history, science, philosophy, coffee table books about art and music and film. Doesn't really matter if it's been published. We're probably going to pick it up, crack it open, and give it a try, which is the very thesis, the very mission statement of this podcast. We do not have to love the books we read. We just have to give them a try and keep an open mind. On this episode, by the way, there's going to be a very quick turnaround if anybody downloads this episode on the day of its release. This was recorded just 24 hours prior, not because the back catalog has shrunk. Full disclosure, it has not. It is still quite extensive, but it is the middle of October. Fall has hit us for a couple of weeks now. It is spooky season. Halloween looms in just about 2.5 weeks from now. And I figured I like Halloween. I think it's quite an amusing day of the year. And of course, here in North America, there's a particular meaning to it. We like to dress up. The kids go out for candy. And we like to treat ourselves to some tricks and treats. And that includes horror. Now, I'm a big movie buff. I enjoy cinema. And most notably, horror films. However, the past couple of Octobers, I've done my due diligence and tried to discover or rediscover some horror literature. For example, last October, so wind the clock back 12 months, I finally sat down and read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is quite an eye-opening experience. Great book, absolutely loved it. But today's episode is not about that. I'm going to try to produce 2 Halloween-themed episodes this week. If I can make it happen, another one for next week, and we'll take it from there. So the first of 2 horror novels I read is a bit of a cheat. It's not a book that is considered to be in the horror genre, although there are very scary things that happen in it, and there are, from a certain point of view, monsters in it. Some listeners may recollect that not too long ago, I released an episode about a few books that really left a great impact on me. Books that are, in large part, the reasons why I am the avid reader that I am today. And one of those books was Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park. That is the book that will be under discussion for this week's episode. Now, I can already imagine some people saying, well, if this is a Halloween-themed episode, why are you talking about Jurassic Park? That's not a horror book. It's not even a horror movie. I mean, it is, but it isn't. The dinosaurs are, in effect, the monsters of the story, both in the book and in the film. Don't worry, the next 10 to 15 minutes is not going to be a page-to-screen comparison, but I think it's fair to say most people know the movie. Not as many people know the book. But, the dinosaurs are the monsters of this story. We humans are afraid of the unknown. What we do not understand tends to frighten us. And in this story, scientists, engineers, technicians, DNA experts have birthed dinosaurs. But humans have never interacted with dinosaurs. Ergo, we only know so much about how they behave, and there are sequences in the novel when the characters, some of which meet very grisly endings, hence maybe some of the horror aspects of it, they sort of learn on the fly how these animals possibly behaved. Of course, there's a little bit more nuance to it than that, because there's a tiny little bit of DNA splicing going on, because they don't always have full strands, which is explained to us by one of the chief scientists who works for John Hammond, the scientist Dr. Henry Wu, employee under John Hammond, who is maybe not a philanthropist. He's very much a business person, a venture capitalist who wants to create a park for the kids to enjoy. Because after all the children around the world love dinosaurs. So I do think that an argument can be made. In fact, I suppose this is the argument I'm trying to make. I'm gonna die on this hill. I will fight this battle till my dying breath. Jurassic Park is almost a horror story. And like so many great horror stories where there's a tinge of the macabre, not everybody gets off the island alive, and those who don't tend to die extraordinarily painful and frightful deaths. The sort of deaths that I'm not interested in. Just let me get hit by a truck so it's quick. In addition to that, I had never read the book in English. In my childhood, I read the novel in French, which might sound a little bit sacrosanct to some people, but I do live in the province of Quebec, and I grew up speaking and reading and writing in French, going to school in French. So it was an opportunity for me to read, the true original version of the novel. And look, even if I had read the book in English back in the day, it's been about 30 years since then. I barely remember the novel at all. And go back to the source. What is the source material, the DNA code, that started what is one of the most profitable, most beloved film franchises, IPs, the world over? And it's not hard to figure out why this would make such a good film, if I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of people who want to pick up this book, buy its rights and translate it from page to screen. It's extraordinarily imaginative. What was I saying just a few moments ago? A horror story, a spooky story with monsters running after humans and sometimes catching them and eating them, or in the case of the velociraptors, the birds of prey, quite literally just killing them because it's in their instincts. They're not even hungry. They just like to hunt, and that's what they do. And the imagination on display is quite extraordinary. Paleontology, which is the study of deceased animals, deceased races of animals, extinct races, ergo dinosaurs, or i.e. dinosaurs, has only been around in full force since, I believe, the early 19th century, or maybe mid-19th century. It's not like we've been studying dinosaur fossils for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. It's still relatively new in the grander scheme of under the massive umbrella of scientific studies, historical studies, and anthropological studies. It's relatively new. So to have done that kind of research, to have spoken to paleontologists, to have spoken to probably bird experts, to have spoken to botanists, not that the flora plays a humongous role in the novel, but it does play a little bit of a role, to have spoken to doctors and DNA experts and computer technicians, because what is Jurassic Park? What does John Hammond need to accomplish, assuming the idea ever went off without a hitch, would be, well, you have to make dinosaurs. Well, how would that happen? Where would you do this? Where would the private island be? Why would it be that island? What's the ecology of that island? What's the flora like? What's the climate like? How would a place like this run? Who would be working there? What kind of technicians would you need? It's a remarkably imaginative piece of literature. In addition to being just a great romp, it's a great lark. But there is a very attentive, detail-oriented fashion in which Michael Crichton explains in minutia how such a park would work. How could a dream such as this come to life? Any good book about a subject matter that perhaps the author, he, she, or they is not necessarily an expert in will require research. I think any good author is going to do at least a degree, a level of reading and note-taking and studying before embarking on a new project. I believe that goes without saying. But I think Jurassic Park is a very, very special case where it is all about the imagination. What if humans could interact with dinosaurs? What would that be like? What if What if an extinct race of animals, long extinct for millennia, came back and roamed the earth? It's quite a ballsy, bold project. And I commend, of course, it's easy for me to commend Michael Crichton. First of all, the guy's been dead for almost 20 years, and he was massively successful. Even when Jurassic Park was published in 1990, he was already massively successful with various other books, most notably Westworld, The Andromeda Strain. He's sort of the Stephen King of science fiction thrillers. But I think it hadn't dawned on me how rich and textured and layered the original novel was. And so revisiting it again for the first time in literally decades was an eye-opening experience. It was like reading it for the first time again, and passages that I probably flew over my head when I was a child. Such as when they're talking about DNA and there were certain strands where there were little blocks, little sequences missing. So Dr. Wu would fill those gaps with some artificial intelligence. They would sort of guesstimate what sort of miniature sequence of DNA coding would be required to fill that gap, and they would work that way. Really quite interesting. And of course, there's the philosophizing of Dr. Ian Malcolm, the rock star mathematician, the expert in chaos theory, who, rather than calculating, pi or squaring things, cubing things, or measurements, chaos theory is a usage of mathematics, don't know why that word couldn't come out straight, by which the analysts try to predict the unpredictable, or rather confirm that things are unpredictable. For as many times as Ian Malcolm tries to explain chaos theory, I'm not 100% certain I've understood it, but it seems to be about confirming that you just can't predict certain things. And for the record, the Ian Malcolm of the book is kind of like the Ian Malcolm of the film. The one in the book is balding, and Jeff Goldblum in the film has a wonderful flock of beautiful, rich, voluminous black hair. But as far as personality goes and persistency in their own theories, it's a pretty good translation in the film of who that character was. And I think one of the things that I started wondering about the book as I was reading it was, I don't have my copy in front of me, but I believe that the proverbial poop hits the proverbial fan, maybe a little over 100 pages in, 125, 150 pages in. Now I have like the cheapest paperback you can buy. I have like the airport paperback, if you will. And it's 440 pages or 444 pages, something like that. And the poop hits the fan at about page 150. And when I realized that, I started wondering, well, how is Crichton going to sustain the tension for another 300 pages? That seems like a long time to put characters through the ringer. And therein lies the beauty and the ingenuity, or at least another facet of Jurassic Park's beauty and ingenuity. He succeeds. He rises to the occasion. Crichton, that is. Ellie and Dr. Grant and Malcolm and Gennaro, the scientist, and Wu and Muldoon, the animal expert, the animal security expert. He really does put them through the ringer with some absolutely extraordinary sequences. There's one in which Grant and the kids, Tim and Lex, are characters in the book as well, although Tim is the pre-teen and Lex is the kid. And in the film, those roles are reversed, but they're in a raft going downstream, and a Tyrannosaurus Rex tries to eat them in the raft. And it's one of the best sequences in the book. The kitchen sequence from the film is in there. It's different in the book, but it's excellent. There's an encounter with the poisonous dinosaurs, the Dilophosaurus, I think that's what it's called. The one that spits sort of poisonous saliva that will blind and irritate the skin. the raison d'être being, well, now that you can't see anymore, the dinosaur can now kill you and eat you. The raptors, there's a fantastic sequence towards the end where the raptors got onto the roof of one of the buildings where the remainder of the humans are hiding, and they're penetrating not the skyline, but they're penetrating the glass roof, and they're trying to get through the steel piping because the power is out, so there's no more electricity to protect them. There's just, he keeps coming up with these fascinating encounters between dinosaurs and humans, and not all of which are threatening. There's a sequence where, again, we're still with Grant and the kids, and they finally have found refuge to sleep for a few hours. I believe they find refuge in one of the not sheds. Obviously, it's more sophisticated than a shed, but it's somewhere where they keep some of their equipment and some of their guns and their rafts and what have you. And when Grant opens his eyes the next morning, he notices that Lex, who in the book is the younger one, is feeding a baby triceratops. She's feeding a triceratops hay through a window. She gives it a name. She would like to ride it. So obviously this is not a threatening encounter. I mean, the mama triceratops shows up and takes the child away. But the characters are not necessarily in imminent danger. But it's also, again, it's this curious, imaginative way of thinking, well, what would happen if a human interacted with a dinosaur? So Crichton is quite good. He excels. No, he's not quite good. He excels at sustaining that level of interest and sustaining that level of intrigue and tension through a variety of challenges and misadventures throughout the book, which was very impressive because, like I was saying, I wasn't sure if even I would be as engaged in the book as it went along, but it's really quite gripping. And another thing I liked quite a bit, this is maybe more of a minor point, but I do want to bring it up, is, in the film, there are a lot of side characters, or characters we're just not that familiar with, that bite the dust at some point in the film. Well, those characters, we actually get into their heads, at least a little bit, in the book. And sometimes we spend their final minutes with them just before they bite the dust. And that was interesting too. Like, what is the psychology of someone who, when the Tyrannosaurus Rex burst through the gate, just left the Jeep and left the kids in the Jeep? Like, what is that person thinking, like, a few hours later, just before the T-Rex finds them anyways and kills them? And Crichton does that a few times in this book. And that's not to say that it's it is an ensemble piece. You have Dr. Grant, Dr. Sattler, you have Dr. Malcolm, you have John Hammond, Dr. Henry Wu plays a pretty big part in the book, Muldoon plays a pretty big part in the book. Characters that exist in the movie, but they're a little bit more prominent in the book. It is an ensemble piece, but amidst this ensemble piece, there are truly secondary, if not tertiary characters, but we do get into their heads and try to have an understanding of why are they doing what they're doing, including Nedry, the fat computer geek, a post-grad or a recent grad in computer science. He's the one doing the corporate espionage for a rival company. He's the one who corrupts the computer systems and the security system, which is why the poop hits the fan when the storm comes over Isla Nublar off the coast of Costa Rica. But even that character, we get into their head at least a little bit before they die. And that was an interesting touch. What are characters thinking and how are they reacting to the world around them when they suspect that, for the lack of a better term, doom is imminent? Now, is the book flawless? No. Again, my thoughts on the book are overwhelmingly positive, very much so, in fact. But there are some little things that I thought were curious. When some of the characters, be they DNA specialists, be they computer technicians, when they start to understand and realize where they went astray in their predictions and their calculations and how they set up the park. I'm excluding John Hammond, because John Hammond, almost until his dying breath, he bites the dust in the book. Unlike in the film, he bites the dust in the book. But he's not as nice in the book. He's very much blinded by the possibilities. He's blinded by what he sees as guaranteed success. But again, he's the dreamer. He's the ultra filthy rich, I can do whatever I want, I'll pay you, just get it done, dreamer. Whereas characters like Muldoon, characters like Arnold, who I believe is supposed to be the character played by Sam Jackson in the movie, characters like Gennaro, the lawyer, when they start to realize where they went astray, sometimes it can be a little bit silly, for characters who are so smart, for characters who have, at least we're led to believe, have done their homework, if I can borrow that expression, they make really weird mistakes. Like Dr. Wu wouldn't have understood that by splicing various strands of DNA from different animals, granted, most of the DNA strand to make a dinosaur is from the dinosaur, but because there are these little gaps in the sequences, he has to take material from other animals, but he doesn't seem to realize that might cause issues, and yet he's a DNA specialist, so that was a little bit weird. There's another sequence where this is before the poop hits the fan, and everybody's there's a guided tour, and they go to the control room, and one of the technicians shows them how they make sure that all their dinosaurs are accounted for. And there's this computer screen, and it's a particular page on the screen with, I believe, a few columns. And one column is for the name of the dinosaur, another column is for the number of expected dinosaurs, and a third column is for the number of dinosaurs accounted for via motion sensors and heat sensors are placed around the park. And I think it's Malcolm who says, well, how do you know that's really how many dinosaurs you have? You have this row for expected dinosaurs. Why don't you just change the number? Like, instead of expecting 100 dinosaurs, let's just pretend you were expecting 150. Would the actual tally differ? And it turns out it does. Like, nobody thought of maybe not having a column of expected dinosaurs. Just go with the true number, like how many dinosaurs are in the park, as opposed to how many dinosaurs are accounted for vis-a-vis the number that the park managers are expecting. Like, that was a bit of a strange mistake as well. But do you want a book where everything goes off without a hitch, or do you want a dinosaur movie where velociraptors are running amok and slicing people's bellies open? I'll take the latter, so I guess some dumb mistakes are necessary. But other than that, it's almost a flawless book. It's maybe a little bit weird that even in the final chapters, as people are dying left and right, characters like John Hammond and Dr. Ian Malcolm are still having philosophical debates about the viability of the park. It's like there are raptors on the roof ready to slice their throats open, and they're still talking about chaos theory. A little bit weird. But other than, little nitpicks like that, Jurassic Park is fully deserving of all the praise that came its way when it was published, and has earned ever since. I'm not an aficionado of the film series. I mostly know just the first 3 movies, not all of which are perfect, really, for being totally honest. But it was very, very amusing and fun and revealing and stimulating. That's something I wasn't expecting to come to this episode with. I felt I was stimulated, even though it is science fiction. It is so well written. It is so detail oriented that you almost believe that they can pull this off. This should work. I think we can do this, guys. Of course, it doesn't work. Way too many people die. But it is a very, very rich and layered, textured, and rewarding read. So if anybody out there has never read Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park and likes the movie or movies, absolutely give this a try. Absolutely give this a try. So there you have it. That was another episode of Open Book, Open Mind. This was a pseudo-Halloween themed episode. I'm sure Jurassic Park is not pure horror, but it's horror adjacent. I hope you enjoyed this one. I had a ton of fun recording it. I had a ton of fun thinking about what I wanted to talk about. And even then, there's things in my notes that I haven't broached. But I like keeping these episodes anywhere between 25 to 30 minutes. But this could have been a long one. This really could have been a long one. But thank you so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next time. Goodbye.